people. I can solicit people with or without the use of state funds, in my humble opinion, respectful view, to do such thing. Because what we're talking about is spreading of ideas. And I don't think the spreading of ideas that um, pertain to the welfare of Tobago can be a wrong thing.
Now, we also seen, well, we also heard, I should say, from the Chief Secretary last night. He addressed the matter a little bit at the community meeting in WIM, and he said that this whole situation shines a light on democracy and the need for autonomy here in Tobago, at least greater autonomy, the autonomy that Mr. Robinson tried to get back in the 1970s. You know, and he said that he's going to be speaking to the CARICOM, to the UN, to the world as to what is happening, how the autonomy of Tobago is also being undermined, and hopefully inspire the people of Tobago to join in the fight, which he promised is going to be ramped up very, very soon.
Well, that's what he has to. I'm glad he's listening and has decided and determined to take that route. I want to make a small amendment to the term um, more autonomy. There's no. I argue, and we can debate it in a academic sense. There is no term such as more autonomy. Autonomy is autonomy. It's either you have it or you don't have it. Autonomy means one thing: self-rule, self-determination. And you could say we don't have true autonomy,
Hmm.
but we don't have
And in fact,
more
Robinson
autonomy.
did say that.
That's the point.
Yes.
So he used the terms correctly. He used a scholar. So self-determination is self-determination. We may not have true, we may have a semblance of it, but it's not autonomy. We don't have autonomy yet. This Tobago House of Assembly Act is a form of democracy that we are trying to
Okay, I
build.
want to see if we can get, I don't know, I
Um,
saw that we see Mr. Nathaniel
Former
Moore.
Senator
Yes.
Nathaniel
All right,
Moore.
let's see if we can get some views of the people gathered outside.
Right? I understand these people. It's only now to be going and getting to really understand who and what is PLM. One of the first, the book from J. Davidson was the first man that came out of I wanted to somebody PLM goes. I don't know whether it got what was going with books and that sort of stuff. Right? And PLM was never good. They was never interested in Tobago, and they come here all up to today. But what happening now? From the foundation, Brother Moore and these men set, it really for people like also know to put on the roof on that foundation. And I've been there with these fellas from ever since. I know Mr. Beard will come here this morning because he's been chair. And I know he want to come to this sitting. That's how important it is to these fellas from that struggle from West. It's from Robinson right down. But just a different breed of people that Rowley and the PNM have to deal with. This whole thing, man, I could talk until whenever.
Mr. Hector, one last question. Are you of the belief that this entire investigation was orchestrated by the PNM administration?
Obviously, set up PNM Customs setting up their own. Remember Hilford McKenna? Even Charles. Yeah, they tried to destroy their own, much less we. Much less we. That was a whole orchestrated setup. I was listening by this morning, Skippy. Everything Skippy saying there is true. Because them men they saw all we come from the bowels. We've been studying and watching the activity at the PNM over time. Let me tell you something about the PNM. If the PNM want to do something, then we'll come out and make it look like it's the opposition doing that. Because I see somebody saying something, says this morning, how Kelvin mother received some phone call. Rubbish to ask him not to attack Fali. PNM will do that to make it look like if it's somebody otherwise. Otherwise, they will do that. That's the kind of things they just do. Yeah?
Can we get
Thank
your full
you.
name, sir?
Say again?
Your full name?
My name is Carl Hector.
On the scene, our reporter Luke Jamestrom gathering some comments from those that are on the scene. What we are seeing here also happening as a result of this situation is that the people of Tobago, the supporters of, I should say, the supporters of Fali Augustine and Chief Secretary Fali Augustine and his team, they're coming out in their numbers. We saw them last night. We saw them come out in full support of the Chief Secretary and the team.
And I think that the I speak it very flatly. I think the Prime Minister and the PNM, they've backed up a wrong tree. I think they've miscalculated. Let's have a little bit of history. Since 1986, I think it was, um, the present Prime Minister went up for Tobago East, Tobago West,
Yes,
and he lost.
1980.
1980,
Yes.
some stand correct, 1980, and he lost. Since that time, Tobago has rejected him, and he has never gotten over that. He feels that Tobago did not own him, did not cherish him, did not warm, and he has never had a
Scholars, are
good
you of the
taste
belief
of
that this
Tobago in his
investigation was
stomach.
orchestrated by the
And
PNM
I think,
Okay,
administration?
just pause it. So
PNM
it's like,
administration is capable of a great many things, including this. Thank you.
right there we have the Assembly Council, I should say, Tasha Boris, just giving a quick comment as we're seeing some more people arriving. And I know we see the minority and hope they can
Well,
get a
we
comment.
look forward to the police doing police work, and whatever the outcome is, let the chips fall where they may. Some say that is a PNM rubbish.
Mr. Noah,
Your reactions to that, Mr. James?
I'm tired. I like to ignore him, but it shows that in my book, he's a fool. Um, clearly, to tell it clearly to the blind and to the deaf, you know it smells PNM, it walks like PNM, it talks like PNM, so it must be PNM. What else can it be? You've just read the history. You've just read the history from the literature. They desperately want to get back in power. And for the two seats, I'm interested to hear what the representative for Tobago East, representatives of Tobago East and West are saying in all of this. Because this goes to the root of our constitution and our democracy. And I'm saying that the police has put the cart before the horse, proverbially speaking, because there's no evidence of an agreement. That's months ago. And I think that the real reason why they're pursuing this matter is because people feel they are not being paid. And ostensibly, you are attacking the institution because a former chief administrator has done her duty. She's done her duty to the state and the public, in the public service. She has done her duty to as a responsibility under her duties as chief administrator, and to the police, who will eventually come to her in respect of evidence. She reported the matter as it was her duty to the Public Service Commission. So the quarrel is not with Farley. The PNM's quarrel should be with the Public Service Commission,
No,
because they did their duty.
we saw a similar situation like this happening under the NAR government, where when they took office, Mr. Robinson made it his duty to investigate and to, take back the money that was stolen from the government. And he launched several audits, several investigations, and so on. I mean, there were so many things that happened, at that time. We had economic challenges within the country. And
Yes.
there was unrest,
And then he introduced the mobilization tax and 6%, I think it was,
which
and all of that.
received quite a lot of criticism.
And they almost killed him. In fact, they killed him, but killed him slowly.
Yes. So, I mean,
So-
is this situation? Can we draw parallels? Do you think it's similar to what
And-
Mr. Robinson faced?
Entirely, because if the inquiry goes a particular way, our chief secretary can be in handcuffs. He could be arrested if it goes a particular way. And that is why I'm raising the point. Propaganda can be good or bad. The question is, how do you draw the line?
Mhm.
Propaganda is a marketing of ideas. And if I market ideas, how can that be unlawful? So if you examine it as a reporter, go back to all the academic texts and you'll see. And when you take, as I said before, a teleological view or reading of it, you will notice from a teleological reading of the word propaganda, it cannot be unlawful once you do not tell lies and against a particular person, and the recourse is at a court of law. The recourse is not to be charged.
Hmm.
Even if I spread propaganda against you, the police can't arrest me. You can sue me in my own person. So how that becomes a police action, an item for police action? That's the question.
Now, another question.
Can you see the point I'm making?
Yes. But another question that's coming up, and this is coming up from the PNM side of things, that this situation has led, because we see the support that the Chief Secretary has from the public. Last night we saw it online, we're seeing it this morning. But now we're hearing that there's hatred being spewed towards the PNM. They are being told that they have lost their Tobago-ness because of this whole situation, because of their advocacy, their vocalization of against some of the things that are happening within the current administration. Do you think that they are fair in saying that they are facing calculated hatred from supporters of the Chief Secretary?
It is their own undoing. If people decide to hate someone, that person perhaps would either have no good reasons. And people are free in this democracy to hate and to like. So now I not even comment on that. It's pure stupidity for Kelvin Morris et al. To say that they are now the objects of hatred. But don't their supporters hate us too? So is it necessarily quid pro quo? I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that people are free they could take it how they want, because the evidence is there. You submit invoices. We go through the concrete to see if it matches what you say in your invoice. Nonetheless, you submit invoices for millions of dollars. Isn't that fraudulent? Because what has been discovered in evidence in the audit says something different to what is in your invoice. So then who should be charged for fraud? You have to look at it that way. So you being fraudulent, you are submitting an invoice to defraud the state. And then you come around, and because we are talking about the spreading of ideas, good ideas, and paying people to market ideas, that's a tool each government must have and must acquire and must in fact do. So even if there's agreement, when you look at it, again, forgive me for ad nauseum for using the word. I want us to begin to use that word. Teleologically speaking means wide and visionary speaking. If you look at the application of that word, the government must do things to further its program once we know that in law there's no such thing as that.
All right, viewers, and now we are standing by, just so you know, we are standing by for live coverage of what is happening in the Assembly legislature. As we saw earlier, the arrival of the assemblymen and councillors into the House. So we are just awaiting the cue for the start of the sitting. And as soon as we get that cue for the start of the sitting, we are going to go straight to it. So we are, like I said, we are continuing our conversation until with Mr. James.
Yeah. So let's go back to let's go back to that particular question. So they are seizing gadgets and personal devices. They know, that there has been no agreement, but they can't prove it. So if it is we had a conversation between us or amongst the team of us here, and they can find cooperation and agreement through messages or images on our personal devices, that is when they're going to prove agreement, because you have to have an agreement for society, for conspiracy, at common law to be effective, because conspiracy is a tort or wrongdoing at common law, because the law could not really properly define expressly what conspiracy is. It has too many loose ends. So that is why even up to today, they can't define conspiracy in law, in statute law. And therefore, so they have to do it at common law and say it's a conspiracy. So even that is difficult to prove. So it has to be on the preponderance of evidence. So that is why they go into Tom, Dick, and Harry to find and to ensure that there's a preponderance of evidence to prove agreement and hence conspiracy. But the question is, even so, even if they can find agreement, the question will be, so that's why they're going all about. They have 47, 46 warrants. So they can say, based on the preponderance of the evidence, there was agreement to commit fraud. Now, if that didn't happen, then they have no case. But the question at the back end of it is whether propaganda is really unlawful.
Do you think that
And we have to prove that. That's a legitimate question. It has to be answered.
And we are getting some information that the sitting is going to start any moment now. But I mean, we're going to continue. Like I said, as soon as it starts, we're going to go straight into it. But are we seeing a situation where the police is being used to intimidate the assemblymen? And I mean, of course, we had Chief Secretary Friday Gusson last night saying that he's not afraid and he's not going to be pushed into a corner by anyone.
But the craziness is that his wife is at home giving suck to her baby. His wife is at home giving suck to her newborn child. You understand the environment and the atmosphere in all of that. You go into the house, mother just has a baby, and you disturb the peace, and it could have been done in which country? Even Donald Trump, past president, they never put handcuffs on him. They call him and say, listen, you're under indictment. So come, let us talk. They didn't put and he could have been put in handcuffs. So when these kinds of things happen, you know for sure that it's political policing and political persecution. Because what? I did not get my money. My friends did not get their money. My permanent secretary was interdicted. Right? My permanent secretary is perhaps going to lose his job. And you reported me before the Public Service Commission, but that's the law. But he yesterday and today is breaking the law. He said and he's defended. In this case now, let's change the language. In today's case, you have the Prime Minister defending his breach of the law. So he's a lawbreaker, but then in PNM now are sending out police officers to investigate fraud where there is no fraud, when they themselves, led by their leader, is committing a wrongdoing according to the laws of this country.
And also, what does that state for just even the strength of the assembly in terms of advocating to the police to investigate other matters that need to be investigated within our space?
But it's glaring to the police. It's glaring to the police. They're not doing their jobs in all of the places, and must be all of the places are not selective. And this whole thing, as we are viewing our chamber that is built on democratic principles, we are now fanning the flames of secession, and the question must be put outside there. I think Tobago updates must go up there in every youth specialist at that, from Charlottesville to Canaan to north as Lansamy and as south as Scarborough, and ask the question, form the question well, because there's nothing to be gained from this union. We are being persecuted from the onset in respect of the development of our Tobago House of Assembly. We are talking about very minimal funds to do our work in Tobago. When God gave us in our waters for sustenance, and they're taking all of it and give us 4%. When we have millions, trillions of dollars outside there, we don't need Trinidad. Trinidad needs us to have their and maintain their way of life, their societal way of life. And if I say to Tobagonians, consider what is in it for you.
And and as you're saying all of that too, we are also getting ready for this afternoon. The Parliament is also sitting this afternoon. I mean, let's not forget what's also going on there with the procurement legislation and the need to amend it. And from what I understand, the Tobago House of Assembly was not even consulted before the procurement legislation was proclaimed in April, putting a lot of pressure onto the procurement units of the THA to conform to this new legislation, and putting you know, a lot of the small companies, so small businesses, the entrepreneurs, the micro businesses, putting them in a very precarious situation where they may not be able to do business with the THA, you know, going forward.
So it is disenfranchising the smaller contractors. It is disenfranchising people of Tobago by these onerous conditions that the PNM put in place and don't know trying to mash up. So if it doesn't work for them, they break it. If they get resistance from Tobago in terms of the directions we want to take, they call in the police. So that we are being stymied or estopped at the town country planning. We are being estopped at EMA. We are being estopped by the police, being estopped by the PNM, being estopped by the Prime Minister. So today again, I'm calling on the president. She's the only executive officer in this country that has an oath to defend the Constitution. And I'm asking her, President, that you call in the Prime Minister and do as you said you will do, that you would not be defined by your former party, and to defend Tobago's the Tobago's Assembly Act and all that pertains to it, so that we can have a better day. If you don't do that, you perhaps can see, Madam President, this country fragmented into two parts with Tobago going its own way. So I'm asking, I'm putting out the management of Tobago updates. Let's ask a question. It's a fair question, whether when people look at it, whether it is useful to stay in this union or not useful to stay in this union. Robinson told us of his pains. And when you read books like what Dr. Winston Murray would have said, the politics of the dispossessed, and we are dispossessed as it stands. All right.
And I know, I mean, as you mentioned, Dr. Murray, I don't think a lot of people of this age know or remembers that Dr. Murray even tried. He tried his own, he had his own efforts. He raised his flag, his own Tobago flag in Plymouth back in the day and so on, you know, trying because he believed so much in Tobago standing on its own.
But he was the one that insisted for 4 years, you know. And to set the record straight, people don't like to hear it, but Robinson was proposing 3 years, right? And Murray, Robinson walked out of the house, you know. Although we adulate him so much, he walked out of the house, and Murray stayed. And because Murray stayed, Winston Murray is really the true hero, not Robinson. People don't like to hear that, but that's a fact. I'm not taking anything away from Robinson, but researchers like yourself could go and look at it, and you will see what happened. But nonetheless, it was Robinson was the proposer of the idea, so we'll give him credit for that. But he was not going for 4 years. Murray said 3 years. 3 years is like the regional corporations, 2 years and 3 years.
Yes.
And we are different. We are full government here in Tobago. And
we're seeing Mr. Watson Duke now. So we're going to take him in.
Perhaps after lunch. Have you been contacted? I have been contacted. I've given my statement. No, I mean, the comment is yes.
Mr. Duke, some members of the current THA administration are of the belief that this investigation was orchestrated by the PNM administration. Are you in agreement with those beliefs?
Well, it's hard to say. It is the end of the investigation. We would be able to conclude as to what findings were, and it was really PNM orchestrated. It was brought upon by our own actions.
Some bit of the audio there, but and not too sure how much we were able to get from Mr. Duke.
Well, I did hear him say, it's hard to tell.
Yes.
It's striking when he is against the whole Valiant team, but he now said it's hard to tell. He suddenly doesn't know that it is orchestrated by the PNM. What a thing. What a thing. So I think Candice, we've embarked on a very dark period in our history. And it's either we get autonomy or we don't. It's either we get what is due to us in the budgetary arrangement, at least a 6.9, but that is not going to be sufficient by any means. But it must be something satisfactory. And if the status quo is going to continue, it doesn't portend well for the future of this nation. It doesn't portend well for continuing with this union, and doesn't work for us. It works for those who live in Trinidad. They have all the low prices. They have all the highways, right? They have the best roads in the country. They have all the institutions of state there. They don't have to travel far to access them. Everything is in their favor. The government can borrow for itself, and we don't have any to borrow in Tobago. They have to authorize us to borrow. So we can't even borrow. Then we go to the quarry where we can export. We can't get an export license because they're blocking us. Because they know if we begin to export or aggregate, which is the best in the world from what the scientists have said, then it will be a significant revenue stream for us here in Tobago. All right? Then we can't blast. When they recognize they won't get any materials at themselves, they say, okay, we'll give you the permit to blast. So at every instance, you are seeing where Tobago is being circumscribed in respect of its thrust for development.
Yes. All right. And like I said, viewers, we are standing by. We continue to be standing by as we await for the start of the Assembly legislature. We just saw the arrival of Mr. Watson Duke. And I'm thinking that we should be linking there pretty soon as it gets started, as we're getting here from the Chief Secretary, Fali Augustine. And just to give it an idea, and this is in relation to all the police investigations that are happening at this point in time in Tobago. We see that the Chief Secretary stated that, last night he would not be afraid. He would not be backed into a corner. The governance of Tobago will continue despite the distractions, despite the despite all that's happening, despite the accusations. He will continue to do the work that he was elected to do here in Tobago. He will be speaking today in relation to the need for autonomy, because this situation, he says, highlights the need for Tobago to have greater autonomy. And he'll be speaking not just Tobago, but to Trinidad and Tobago, the CARICOM, the UN, and the world at large. So viewers, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back very shortly as we get ready for the start of the Assembly legislature sitting right here on Tobago Updates.
To a brand new dawning as the passion start to rise, the energy filled up.
Right now, Tobagonians are just scurrying down to Bonaccord in Stobie Local Road. You know why? To come down and shop at Authentic Builders General Hardware, the only hardware store in Tobago that is giving you guys Trinidad prices. So for instance, such as steel, 1/2 and 5/8, $7,895. 5/8 construction ply for $260. Every single thing that you will need to do your home renovation or start your new construction, we have it right here. And to get your quotation, it's very easy. Just WhatsApp us at 272-1990 and we will do your free WhatsApp quotation for you.
Everybody only worrying. Never ever worry. Don't mind how things looking hard. I tell them never ever worry. If your life can't get damaged bad. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider that till is always right here for you. I tell them never ever worry. Don't mind if life make you sad. I tell them never ever worry. If your house gets flooded out real bad. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider that till is always right here for you. I tell them never ever worry. If sickness catch you off guard. I tell them never ever worry. If times fall on you real hard. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider that it will always be here for you. Never worry about a thing. Tatil, where people are.
You're listening to WZYE 95.9 FM.
You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from... You're listening to WZYE 95.9 FM. You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from East Orange, New Jersey, the most influential name in Caribbean radio, WZYE 95.9 FM.
Coverage any moment now. We're going to be seeing the assembly. We're going to get into the assembly legislature as the sitting starts, and we're going to hear from Chief Secretary Fali Augustine as he addresses a lot of the situations, a lot of the developments that's happening in Tobago. But in some bit of a breaking news, viewers, we are getting reports of a new permanent secretary being appointed at CAS. As we know, for the last few weeks, last couple of months, I should say, we have been without a permanent secretary at CAS, and that is preventing, in essence, in a nutshell, preventing the distribution of checks to the THA, because those things need the authorization of a permanent secretary. And we are hearing at this point in time, and hopefully we get a confirmation on it, but so far we are hearing that it is Mr. Erland Kent who would be that person filling that position of permanent secretary at CAS. So hopefully it means that the situation where some workers are being owed salary payments under developmental programs, some of the contractors, some of the suppliers, they can be able to get their monies now, as hopefully, the work would go. So we're going straight into the Assembly Legislature at this time.
Let us now pray. O Almighty God, as we have come together to begin our meeting of the Assembly, we humbly beseech you to grant to all our members the light and guidance of your Holy Spirit, that we counsel together and come to such decisions as shall promote your glory and the well-being of all our citizens in this our land, so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Members, you may be seated.
Oath of allegiance of a new member. Announcements by the presiding officer.
Honorable members, I have received requests for leave of absence from today's sitting from Assemblyman Terence Baines, member for Bethel Newgrange. Honorable members, the leave.
Assembly bills sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back to Parliament. Petitions, papers, presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission, select committees, Chief Secretary's questions to secretaries, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance, statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries, statement by the Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance, Trade and Economy.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that Standing Order 91-1 be suspended. I beg to move that Standing Order 91-1 be used to suspend Standing Order 29-2 to allow for the Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance, Trade and the Economy to present his statement in its entirety. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Honorable members, the question is that Standing Order 91-1 be used to suspend Standing Order 29-2 to allow for the Secretary of Finance, Trade and the Economy to present his statement. All in favor, say aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Member for Palatouve, Lansome, Speyside, you may begin.
Madam Presiding Officer, in a similar vein, I beg to move that Standing Order 91-1 be used to suspend Standing Order 29-3 and allow for questions from the minority for a minimum of 3 questions.
Minority Leader, you're already afforded 1 question.
Asking for the Standing Order to be suspended and allow the minority to have more than 1 question.
Honorable members, the question is
Minimum.
Honorable members, the question is that Standing Order 91-1 be used to suspend Standing Order 29-3 to allow for the minority to have a maximum of 3 questions.
A minimum of 3, a maximum of 5.
A minimum of 3, a maximum of 5 questions after the statement has been made. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Nay.
The nays have it. Member for Palatouve, Lansome, Speyside.
Madam Presiding Officer, I rise on a point of order, Standing Order 29 and Standing Order 15. Standing Order 15 says, Madam Presiding Officer, that this House, while in recess, should and shall only be convened for matters that are urgent and extraordinary. I've read a press release, and
Minority
based
Leader,
on the press
you may
release,
have your
there's
seat.
no matter.
Minority Leader, I'm on my feet. Honorable members, please. The reason why this meeting is convened is because they have sought leave from the presiding officer as per Standing Order 16.4. I would advise you to apprise yourself in the downtime with the standing orders of this House. Thank you. Honorable Member for Palliative Lands for me, Speyside. You may begin.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I rise in this special and urgent sitting to address you, this House, the people of Tobago, and by extension, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And while I'm sure the country is listening, including the Prime Minister, who seemed anxious about this very sitting last night, and who is keen about minding Tobago's business, I am certain that by the time I'm through, the world at large will also be listening. I'm grateful to the members of this House who have allowed me to exercise a right given under Standing Order 6A and 14.1 to disrupt our fixed recess on account of an urgent matter that cannot wait. Madam Presiding Officer, this sitting is urgent in nature so that the government of the island of Tobago can fully register its position on the existential threats now being made against the institution that is the Tobago House of Assembly and the people of Tobago. This sitting will also provide Tobagonians with the government of the island's strategy for treating with these threats. The House will in the future consider and decide what action must be taken to resist the attempts of the central government to subvert the democratic will of Tobagonians and the democratically elected government of the island of Tobago. And while the deliberations on these urgent matters may result in this House returning during our fixed recess to defend the Tobago people's business, I will outline today the first line of defense for this noble institution called the Tobago House of Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, I am 38 years, 2 weeks, and 4 days old. This modern Tobago House of Assembly is 42 years, 7 months, 2 weeks, and 1 day old. And while I was conceived 4 years, 5 months, and 3 days after the start of the modern Tobago House of Assembly, I'm acutely aware of our history, and I'm reminded every day in this job who the antagonists to internal self-government were and still are. Madam Presiding Officer, we have arrived at a tipping point where the same antagonists who stood up in opposition to the amendments and upgrades to the functions of the THA in 1996 are today leading the country and have been exercising their powers through abuse and misuse of state institutions to frustrate, cause reputational damage, and ultimately destroy the institution that is the Tobago House of Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, elections have consequences. These consequences are manifested in the changing of workers in key positions, changing of boards, their memberships, and their structures, and sometimes in simple but profound ways, such as the fact that in the first time in the history of this island, the villages that I am from can now see lights running from Kings Bay to Charlottesville. Imagine, Madam Presiding Officer, a consequence of an election is that Bark Hill now has lights. But the most signal consequence of an election is that someone must win and someone must lose. We won, the PNM lost. A key to a healthy democracy must be the peaceful transfer of power. The peaceful transfer of power means more than just handing over the keys to offices and instruments of appointments. It means that those who lose must not engage in tactics to intimidate, drive fear, delay, or disrupt the work of the new government without cause. In Tobago, after a young and arguably upstart group of people uprooted 21 years of undisturbed PNM rule, we have had public promises of collaboration, while in the dark, they quietly plot and execute plans to disrupt and destroy the government and its institutions in Tobago. Today, I will expose one of such plots as it was brought to my attention. In fact, Madam Presiding Officer, I'll be taking my key from the goodly Prime Minister, who through the House of Parliament brought the country's attention to Emailgate. So serious is this plot that I must bring it to this House, have it recorded in full detail on the Hansard, and hopefully justice will be served. In the absence of confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to treat with the matters herein, and with the purposeful corruption of some public justice systems, I fear that this space is the only place I can come to expose what was shared in confidence with me, and hopefully one of the entities I will call upon will provide justice for this little Tobago. As a prelude to some damaging allegations that were brought to my attention, I wish to shed light on the machinations of the political directorate in Trinidad and expose their meanness to Tobago and Tobagonians. Over the past 2 months or so, the news cycle have been dominated by a ruse about a leaked audio tape, a matter which I addressed publicly and extensively in June. The controversy swirled around whether a government can hire people for the purpose of propaganda, and whether or not this government has hired people for the sole purpose of propaganda to help shape a narrative. I have since categorically stated that we have hired no one for the sole purpose of sharing government propaganda. And I've also said very clearly that we have hired no one under disguise for the real purpose of sharing propaganda. But allow me for a moment to define some terms for the ignorant. Propaganda is really and truly the provision of information used to promote a political cause or point of view. And if we are honest, we will admit we inherited systems that do just that. We live in a country with a ministry responsible for sharing the government's side of the story. That is propaganda. We live in a country where the government owns and operates and selects a board and CEO of a television station. That is propaganda machinery at work. We even inherited a department in the THA called Information Division. The point is, Madam Presiding Officer, every government of every country must consider mechanisms by which it shares its side of the political story. That is expected and perfectly legal. And in our considerations, though we considered all options, we chose not to hire for the sole purpose of propaganda or in disguise for propaganda. A simple matter, one will think. But when the police officers go to work with balisés under their khaki suits, and when the laws and mechanisms for choosing a leader of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service forces prospective leaders to kiss the royal behinds of the sitting Prime Minister, simply non-illegal concepts will get criminalized for the sole purpose of distressing those who have a different political point of view from those in power. Trinidad and Tobago we are treading on very dangerous grounds. It is most undemocratic of a principle where government and the country cannot peacefully facilitate dissenting voices or point of views. Democracy means one's right to be even rude and noisy in objection to the government of the day without fear of political persecution. Madam Presiding Officer, there is prosecution and then there is persecution. What is happening in Tobago at this very hour is persecution. For the purpose of this presentation, I have sought and received permission from the presiding officer to display 4 series of photos as exhibits 1 through 4. I have also sought and received permission from the presiding officer to show this house 8 video audio recordings. I was alerted to the latest machinations of a so-called independent police service on the weekend when the home of esteemed retired head of the public service in Tobago, Miss Ethelyn John, was raided. Here is a woman who had a stellar career in the public service, who spent a significant portion of her years developing the Tobago tourism product, especially in its heyday, served as permanent secretary to ministries across the country, being hunted down in an effort to appease some political vampires. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to ask that Exhibit 1 be displayed at this time. I wish to pause to allow this house to look at this warrant used to confiscate the phones and electronic devices. Madam Presiding Officer, the ridiculousness of this warrant is that it was granted on the basis that Ms. John was hired in and around November 2021. A simple Google search would have revealed that the PNM was in office at that time, and anyone hired at that time would have been hired by the PNM. Further, and perhaps more egregious, is that the THA is the prospect that the THA hired Ms. John. Was the TTPS afforded a lawyer? Do they do any research in the TTPS? Or do they just go on faulty instructions? Neither the THA nor the central government hires public servants. That is done by the Public Service Commission. Madam Presiding Officer, I was here just last month complaining and revealing a letter where I wrote the Prime Minister complaining about breach of process last year after Ms. John assumed in late February 2022. Google could have provided that. But here we have a warrant that premises on a pattern of being fully done. Madam Presiding Officer, it is clear from the flawed premises of the warrant to Ms. John that they had no real legal cause. And I hope to God that Ms. John challenges them. Could it be, Madam Presiding Officer, that this is payback or retribution for Ms. John submitting allegations against a senior public servant from the office of the Prime Minister who was fingered in wrongdoing by the recent audit of works from the Division of Infrastructure? Could it be that they are trying to get information so that they can have an upper hand at pending civil cases against such public officer and others? Madam Presiding Officer, I then move to Exhibit 2.
Members, I would love to hear this contribution. Please be guided by Standing Order 44. You may continue.
Exhibit 2, this is a production order of 4 pages long. The page we are seeing now is the final page. But this is a production order served on the current Chief Administrator of the Tobago House of Assembly. And I take this opportunity to publicly welcome the recently appointed Chief Administrator, Mrs. Denise Toby Koshi. I will ask the technical team to pause on page 2 of the exhibit. The first red flag of this production order is how wide it is. The THA between November 2021 and now have employed well over 1,000 people. Does the TTPS expect the THA? Sorry.
Members of the public, you are guests to this sitting. I am sure you all have been briefed of the protocols of the House. Kindly turn off all cell phones or have them on silent. Anybody in breach of this would be asked to excuse themselves. Thank you. Continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The first red flag of the production order is how wide it is. The Tobago House of Assembly between November 2021 and this date have employed well over 1,000 people. Does the TTPS expect that the THA can provide soft and hard copy of all these personal files? Well, Madam Presiding Officer, I hope the Chief Ad packs all these files on a truck and give the TTPS to take them back to Trinidad to review them. Further, I see among the list one person who has never been an employee of the THA, and then my heart weeps when I see my 5th form Spanish teacher on the list. Madam Presiding Officer, this lady taught me in 5th form between 2000 and 2001. Clearly, that lady could not be an employee brought on by this administration. What is evident is that the basis of these warrants was for the TTPS to go on Facebook, find all the people who are vocal supporters of this administration, and persecute them for supporting this administration. What is even more laughable, in a macabre kind of way, is that these individuals actually post on social media with their real identities. If this is the level of intelligence gathering of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, it stands to reason why crime is where it is. It is not illegal for employees of the THA and for persons who find employment during our tenure in office to publicly support this administration. I also find it quite curious that the TTPS has never gone behind real fake profilers operating from out of the opposition camp. How come the police in question Rhoda Barrett yet? And she is a clear case of being employed by the state under false pretense to do blogging for a belligerent government. This is an affront to democracy. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is saying to Tobagonians that anytime you jump on Facebook to support the policies of this administration, you are guilty of some crime made up in their imagination. And then we look at number 5 on this production order, which I wish to quote from, and I quote, item 5 on the production order. This is what the TTPS is asking for. Certified internal email, printout or digital, of all communication regarding Kevon McKenna, Chanel Felix, Abigail Warner, Tennille Jack, Jason Arthur, Pearl Henry, OJ Noel, Jimmy Sylvester, and Callis Boyce, and other persons employed at the THA during the period 2021 to present, emanating from the National Executive Committee members of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, close quote, emanating from the National Executive Committee of the PDP, which executive of which political party can email instructions to public servants? This is not even remotely possible. The TTPS needs to send a production order to the executive of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, if at all they have one. They need to raid PDP headquarters, if at all it is still open. I now turn to Exhibit 3. Exhibit 3, this is the warrant served on Deputy Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Dr. Faith B. Israel. I'll ask the technical team to display exhibit number 3. So we are done with production order. Right. Madam Presiding Officer, do I really need to come to this house to tell the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and some ignorant magistrate that the member for Belgarden, Glamorgan, is not hired by the THA? Madam Presiding Officer, it seems like we have many presiding officers today. Man, shut us.
Honorable members, and I say honorable because that is what you are. Honorable Chief Secretary, I would ask you to retract your statement and apologize to your fellow members of this house for the statement that you just made. This is, the chamber is called an August chamber for a reason. Let's have some decorum as we continue with your statement, please. I'll ask you to retract and apologize before you continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I'm so guided. I apologize, I'll retract, and I'll save some of these comments for outside the chamber. Madam Presiding Officer, do I need to explain in this house that the member for Belgarden Glamorgan is not hired by the THA? Do I need to explain in this house that in the elections of 2021, the people rejected PNM propaganda as nonsense and in turn voted for ours, which resulted in Dr. Faith B. Israel being a member of this house? Clearly, this is a lazy copy and paste warrant that tells of the decrepit state of the TTPS. Or is it that this is a symptom of a political leader directing the operations of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service? Yes. Final exhibit by way of photos is the warrant served to me yesterday, pretty similar to the one issued to the member for Belgarden, Glamorgan, except that it purports that I can and have hired in ministries. Well, I did not know I have such powers. But Madam Presiding Officer, I refuse to believe that this is just sloppy work by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Indeed, they are known to be sloppy at times, but this is bigger than a case of sloppiness, and I wish to now share the visions. Earlier in the month, a gentleman kept trying to meet with me. He even on 2 occasions got past security at Victor E. Bruce and found himself at my office. Eventually, my personal assistant decided to respond to his request for a meeting and forwarded the matter for my attention. I immediately said no, and I blanked the gentleman a meeting on several occasions. The gentleman claimed he had information about this leak audio tape, and I decided I did not want to hear anything from said gentleman, who was a former political colleague from when I served on the executive of the PDP. Eventually, as the gentleman persisted, I met with him. I met with him firstly on Friday, 7th July at 03 p.m. thereabouts at the official residence of the Chief Secretary. That meeting lasted just about 58 minutes. The gentleman came and made some startling claims that at first I chose not to believe. In fact, at the end of the conversation, I prayed with the gentleman and asked him to go seek a lawyer for advice. The gentleman again insisted on another meeting with me. And we had that meeting on the morning of Wednesday, the 12th of July, around 8:30 a.m. in the morning. This time he made even more startling claims. Again, I did not take it seriously because I felt someone was trying to set me up. However, when the warrants and the production order started popping up, I realized that some aspects of his story can very well be corroborated by what was in these documents. Madam Presiding Officer, I did due diligence, and none of the matters I'm about to raise is before any court in the land, and therefore is very much permissible in this house. Madam Presiding Officer, I have learned a hard lesson from having people, including high-ranking officials in this country, misrepresent meetings with me. And so I've decided to start recording some of those meetings for my own safety and record. Thankfully, those 2 meetings I had, I recorded them, and I did so without the knowledge of the gentleman or the whistleblower. I again checked with lawyers, and there was nothing illegal in those actions. I will share those claims here because I have no confidence whatsoever that the police who is implicated will do anything about it. And given the example from the Prime Minister on Emailgate, I bring this matter to this House in hopes that it will force honesty and an independent inquiry. On Friday, 7th July 2023, and I'm about to show the first clip. Let me advise this House that the recording was not done with professional equipment. However, subtitles are provided.
Madam Presiding Officer, how could that is not
Minority
an
Leader,
official
do you
document.
rise on a standing order?
I'm rising on the point of order that this, what we are allowing, is not an official document. The standing order.
Standing order. This is
it has to be an official publication. What is the official publication?
Minority Leader.
The source.
Minority Leader.
Tell us the source.
Continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, as expected, yes, I expect them to attempt in every way to disrupt the truth from being heard. Madam Presiding Officer, you are in charge of this house. So, Madam Presiding Officer, the gentleman that came to me is one Mr. Akil Abdullah. And he is the named whistleblower in this matter. I asked for the first clip to be played. Thank you. For clarity, I will repeat the transcribe. The gentleman said, and I quote, "You are forgetful because it was not a meeting that you thought you had. It was actually a PDP meeting, and at that meeting, I sat next to you. So immediately, he intimated that it was a political party meeting and not a government meeting where this discussion was being had. That's what the gentleman is claiming. This will explain why the executive of a political party and not the executive council of the THA was featured in these warrants and production orders. As a matter of fact, Madam Presiding Officer, I was of the belief that it was one of our government meetings until this whistleblower came to me. I would like the second clip to be played, and then I'll read the transcribed notes.
I was approached by Uncle. We spoke. We made an agreement. I also met with our PNM affiliate. I also met with the one here that is benefit, and we planned how to discourage the group yourself primarily and the administration. Week before Friday, I was introduced to Mexico, a student of I don't know if it's presentation, but business submission to last week Friday. Between 30 people. The Mexican and subsequent for that, we have been moved into the Trinidad this week. But something happened. I know it's suddenly that what happened. I am now not comfortable with it. The most crazy, the most wicked, the vile city you can find on the planet. They too have a line. Everyone has a line that they vote for. The particular meeting was held. I hate myself. And at that point, I want to believe this is the justice. And I said to myself, this man, I cannot say. I was angry, bitter, due to all of what happened. I behaved irresponsibly, irrational, and I'm now trying to correct the wrong that was done. On my phone, you will see that they are trying to get me. And it's before that, I have been ignoring them because I am carded to be in Trinidad district. So all of this is ducking them around you. From the police, people with the commission, and so the handler of the which is Abdullah Chandan, I just trying to get into the Trinidad to do that finally. This service statutory declaration of finding all of what they have gotten. Now, whether you submit that is in their objection of justice, they are going to embarrass you nationally and other teaching officials. Drag this thing in court, control it for video with the teachers and the elections so that you can apply some knowledge in them. And there are a number of things that I can repeatedly on. At this conference, I am not able to participate in that difficult plans of, I was with them. I can no longer be expert. So I reached out to my group, sorry, first easily on Tabland. I came back a second time and said that it was good to speak to you. This is a
Madam Presiding Officer, for those who didn't hear clearly, the gentleman said, and I quote, I was approached by Ansil. We spoke, we had an agreement. I also met with other PNM affiliates. I also met with the infamous Warner Kion. That too is on my phone. And we planned to discredit, disgrace yourself primarily, and the administration, the current administration. Week before Friday, I went to Trinidad. They took me to Trinidad, met with the police, had 2 rounds of, I don't want to say interrogation, but witness submissions, 2 of them. Last week, they came to Tobago. They met with me, and subsequent to that would have been me going to Trinidad this week. I was angry, bitter due to all of what happened. I behaved irresponsibly, irrational, and I am now trying to correct the wrong that was done. On my phone, you will see that they are trying to get me. I get missed calls after missed calls, and I've been ignoring them because I'm carded to be in Trinidad this week, all of this week. I am ducking them right through, from the police, Integrity Commission, and still the handler he uses, which is Abdullah Chaban, Kion Warner. They are trying to get me to go to Trinidad to do that final thing. They call it a statutory declaration by a JP. Now, whether you are found guilty or not, that is not the objective. They want to embarrass you nationally and other THA officials. Drag this thing in court up until or even beyond the next THA elections. From now until then. And there are a number of things I can't detail you on, but suffice to say at this juncture, I am not willing to participate in the future plans. I can no longer be a part. So I reached out to Dwayne twice. He wasn't willing to oblige. I came back another time, and he said that he will speak to you. Close quote. Madam Presiding Officer, such an allegation is astonishing to say the least. If proven to be true, it will show that this is all connected to the audit report, as featured in what this whistleblower is saying are persons guilty of ripping off the people of Tobago. Madam President Officer, I move to the next clip. In this one, the gentleman is much more pensive.
Last week now, I had to write down, itemize my transgressions before the Most High God, my iniquities, my sins, as it relates to what I am doing against you. I had to do it that way. So when I go before God, I can confess each one individually, repent from each one individually, and after that, come to you and say, I was wrong, and the wrong needs to be corrected. This is why I took the stand to not respond to them. All right, so I'm not responding to Warner until you know the police. I am not still wanting badly because I am the key to sending you to a lifetime of embarrassment. Can I ask you a question? Yeah. You said earlier that Chadban was a bad man. Did they pay you? Is this? You want me asking how much they pay you? Since I got $10,000 in transit. And to do this was $270,000. And this week, after I would have gone to Trinidad and come back, I would have got another tranche. Another tranche of 275? No. It would have been a large amount. But it's up to them. So they would give you another tranche? Yeah. They would give you. I never asked them for any specific amount, but they have been generous in that way. However, so I took the money and I, did what I had to do, just pay it and stuff like that. So I'm going to Trinidad this coming week. No, sorry. This weekend. This weekend? We're still in this week. Well, today's Friday. Yeah. Well, they have been asking.
Yep. The man has not consented to giving witness publicly. This is going all over the world. I'm President of this is not right. I can't stand for this. The man is being...
Honorable member.
That should be stopped. Unless the person has permission. This should be stopped. Against the House. This is wrong. The man's life is being endangered as we speak. He has not been given permission.
I am on my feet. I am on my feet. I am on my feet. I'm sure you are all aware of the standing orders of this House. Leave was granted by the presiding officers to have clips and footage shown in-house. Continue.
Can the technician continue with the clip?
The money. This week it wasn't about the money. The money is nice, but it wasn't about the money. Destroying you, dear, and faith is not about the money. For me, it started off as a word of God. The bitterness, me abhorring you, the treatment that we have gotten and so on. That's where it came from. Right? So then the money came. But this week, it would have been easy for me to just go down to Trinidad, do what I need to do, and collect another portion of money. But it wasn't about the money. This week, my integrity kicked me upside my head and said to me, Aki, this is not right. You ought not to be doing this. So this is why I'm here.
Thank you. And Madam Presiding Officer, I don't know if I need to repeat all of that, except to point out that in this clip, and it's transcribed in the statement, so members will be able to read in detail what he said. But in this clip, the gentleman claimed to be paid sums of money, tranches of monies, to get his witness statement and to get him to sign a statutory declaration. Madam Presiding Officer, after Mr. Abdullah's pontification, I offered him only two options on that day. One, to go visit my lawyer, as I was ignorant of the steps someone in his position should take. And two, to offer a word of prayer with him, as I offered him forgiveness. Immediately after praying, I asked one of the security officers to drop him off by my lawyer, which was 5 minutes away. Akil returned to the residence on the morning of Wednesday, 12th July 2023. And the first thing I did was to have him establish for my records that he was coming on his own free will. And this opening question by me was to ensure that it was clear that he didn't feel compelled to speak with me or an agent of mine, and that he came to us out of the woodwork. In fact, I am declaring herein that prior to Mr. Abdullah stepping forward, I assumed the claimant was someone else. I assumed the claimant was someone from in this house. Let's get the next clip, please.
Okay, you came to us, right? So you're acknowledging you came to us. Yes. Right, so you came to us.
Thank you. And this was him declaring that he, in fact, came to us. The conversation continued, and let me warn that this one is perhaps more startling than the others. And this is the penultimate clip, the second to last one.
So one, was the Prime Minister really directly involved in the matter? That heightens the concern, I think, if that is so. And two, is there anyone else that is aware of this? Anybody else at all aware of the matter?
It's clear. 45.
Continue, please.
Continue the clip, please.
So, first question. Yes. Met with him twice. As in the Prime Minister, Dr. Oli twice. They met him to Tobago in Trinidad. Yeah. And just he alone was there? No. But how did that interaction go though? And surprised. And we sat down, we had a discussion. At one point, he picked his phone. He called Ola, as in the Commissioner of Police, Ola. Yes. And gave her directives. And I was surprised. They have a network, a powerful network, even around the secretary, where information is collected. And they meet, they discuss it, and they form a tactical approach.
Madam President, this is a worrying piece of information. If true, this means that public officers, including the so-called Independent Office of the Commissioner of Police, is part of a network that is illegally gathering information on citizens and political opponents. Who other powerful public official is part of this network? In fact, allow me to read this as on the statement. It's a conversation. So I asked him if he met with the Prime Minister. He said, yes, I met with him twice.
45.8 says the conduct of the President of the Republic, members of the Assembly, members of Parliament, or a judge.
Minority Leader, I'm sure you are aware you have to rise on a point of order.
But I rise on...
You have not risen on a point of order. We have to understand the standing orders of the House.
Madam Presiding Officer, I rise on a point of order, standing order 45.8 for your consideration. With respect to the previous statement as well, where a judge was described as ignorant judge, and the standing orders are clear.
A judge?
Yes, you said that.
A judge?
Magistrate, sorry, ignorant magistrate.
But you said ignorant.
Honorable members, I tend to agree with the Minority Leader. Standing order 45.8 is relevant in this regard. Please regard it accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But, Madam Presiding Officer, it is worrying that so-called independent public officers can be co-opted to be part of a network to target and destroy political opponents. Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to have the final clip played.
Because they came and they said to me on Monday or Sunday. Was it Sunday or Monday? They said to me. Sunday night. Sunday night. And Monday afternoon. And Monday afternoon.
Oh, apologies. That was the second to last clip. And this was a clip, Madam Presiding Officer, that he spoke about receiving threats on 2 occasions to go and sign the statutory declaration. Next clip.
He gave me $60,000 at one point, which I still owe them because what they wanted from since last week, I cannot give them.
And there's 60,000 outside of the 275,000.
Outside of the 270, not
70.
Yeah, outside of that to do something that I'm not comfortable with. However, they did give me some money leading up to the $60,000, right? They want to also move off of the police project board, so if until then it's Dr. Keith Rowley.
So you have Dr. Rowley, you have Ansel Dennis.
Right. Can I not give you all and just give you a few?
Giving you, you're comfortable giving me.
No, I'm comfortable giving you all. But I want to give you a few.
Sure.
Only because I want to keep some.
When you meet the lawyer.
No. I want to keep some for myself.
Okay. No problem.
Oh, right. The head of the white collar unit, that is the Inspector Ali, that I told you about the other day, the Commissioner of Police, and I forgot the lawyer. He popped up on the news now and then. He was on the call. That about his lawyer. He too is part of the strategy team.
Is that Gilbert Peterson?
Peterson. And those are the persons that we spoke with.
I should go my phone and show you a picture of Peterson when I confirm. You have seen the person?
I saw the person in the meeting.
So all of these people were in one meeting together?
Except one, which is the commissioner. Because he called the commissioner, had the commissioner in the meeting.
This is a person. This is Gilbert Peterson here. This is a person?
This is the guy.
This is the guy?
Yes.
Confirm?
Confirm.
Wow, interesting. So he was in the same room with Miss Ali while they were discussing the matter. So Miss Ali was in the room, Peterson, Dr. Riley, in this one room.
Until. And on a call.
And the commissioner was on a call. Yeah. Interesting.
But this guy,
yeah,
for the most part, he sat quietly.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. That was the final clip, and perhaps for me, the most concerning. The same Mrs. Ali, in whose name the warrants are made out, and who is leading the investigation, it is being alleged by this whistleblower, sat in the same room with the Prime Minister, same room with the political leader of another party, as irrelevant as he might be, and Madam Presiding Officer, this information was brought to me before the warrants were even done and issued. And it was only after seeing the warrants I decided there must be some truth to what the gentleman was saying. Madam Presiding Officer, I have since given my attorneys instructions to write the Commissioner of Police, the Director of the Police Complaints Authority, the President of the Republic, the Director of the Public Prosecution, and any other agency responsible for carrying out justice in this country. That letter has already been drafted, and it says inter alia, and I quote, "Firstly, please be advised that my client has in his possession evidence which is currently the subject of and also protected by legal privilege. That statement given to the police used in the procurement of these warrants were obtained through bribery, improper political influence, corruption, police misbehavior, other forms of police misconduct. It is also noteworthy that the purported criminal investigation being conducted by the police has been the subject of commentary by political opponents of my clients and high-ranking police officers. In particular, and one example, the Minister of National Security stated at a press conference on and around the 5th of July 2023, prior to the execution of these warrants, that DCP Simon had reported to him on the progression of the investigation.
The minority rises on a point of order.
5-8, with respect to the comments made about the Minister of National Security.
It's in keeping with what's being presented here today. It's in keeping with what's being presented here today.
What the Minister said on TV?
Continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, Madam Presiding Officer, that prior to the execution of the warrants, that DCP Simon had reported to him on the progression of the investigation in the following manner, and I quote, "Look, Tobago, the police went over there in large numbers with various elements of expertise to conduct an inquiry with elements of the THA, and I'm not hearing from the man in charge of it, DCP Simon, that based on the flow of things, they will need more time," close quote. Clearly, those in charge of things are reporting directly to the political directorate. Yes. No independence there. I need not remind you that criminal investigations must be conducted fairly and independently. Further, it is well settled law that ministers of government or any other political officer should have no role to play in these investigations, and it is completely improper that the officer in charge of this investigation would be reporting on the progress of same directly to the Minister of National Security, close quote. That letter should be on the desk of the Commissioner of Police today. Moreover, Madam Presiding Officer, I have a few questions to ask. Is this gentleman the complainant or one of the complainants in this matter? Did Inspector Weaver Ali sit in the same room with the Prime Minister to discuss this matter? Did the Commissioner of Police take a directive from the Prime Minister on this matter? Is the Prime Minister a part of and or aware that bribery formed part of inducements to trump up this case? Did the Prime Minister have his personal lawyer intervene in this matter in one way or the other? Did Inspector Weaver Ali sit in the same room with the claimant and the now irrelevant political leader of the PNM Tobago Council and took advice? Madam Presiding Officer, these are serious matters. So serious that it requires an independent inquiry. Will the phones and devices of Inspector Ali, the Prime Minister, the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Dennis, Mr. Abdullah, Mr. Chadban, and Warner be seized, and who will do the seizure? Given that this matter now implicates several high-ranking officials, the investigation must be done independent of these office holders. I want to state that on behalf of this government, I will be writing several international agencies including CARICOM and the United Nations about this matter. The Tobago House of Assembly for the first time will prepare a shadow report on human rights and have it submitted to the United Nations. I want to end, Madam Presiding Officer, by talking about a dream. As a man who believes in the word, I should have known that there are risks to telling your dream out loud. But out of anxiety and out of perhaps exuberance in getting Tobagonians to follow the same dream, I shared with them the dream of the greatest little island on the planet. But also, as a man of the word, I am mindful of the story of Joseph, who had a dream. And on his journey, he was cast into a pit by his brothers, sold in slavery, ended up in prison. But we learned triumphantly that the prison is just a pit stop on the way to the palace. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to say to Tobagonians that your government is alive and kicking. Yes. And that your government will not allow the dream of the greatest little island on the planet to be destroyed by any external entity whatsoever. I thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for this privilege, and Tobago and Tobagonians can look forward to seeing a lot more from us in terms of this fight against the incursions coming from Trinidad. Thank you. God bless you.
Minority Leader, I still afforded one question, 15 seconds long, as per the standing order.
The question is simple. After the Chief Secretary would have basically prosecuted his own case, is the Chief Secretary telling Tobago that the substance of the matter, which is what we heard in the audio recording, public officials discussing a conspiracy to defraud and misuse state funds, is that not worth investigating?
Member for Palatine, Lansing Speyside.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I have addressed this matter several times and clearly to Tobagonians, and that matter, as far as I am concerned, and as far as the laws of Trinidad and Tobago is concerned, is not worth the investigation and the abuse of police privileges in Tobago.
Transition.
Personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the Assembly and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary, public business, executive business, motion for adjournment.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, the question is that this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor, say aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. Honorable member, you are still in the House. You are still in the House.
I will just pray. Sorry, I was praying.
Good afternoon, honorable members.
Against.
Good morning, honorable members.
We have an explosive sitting of the Assembly. This special sitting was indeed very special. And what we saw coming out today from Chief Secretary Fali Augustus under parliamentary privilege is that accusation of a greater plot involving high members of the Assembly, of the government, of the Commissioner of Police. We have the Prime Minister, we have the Commissioner of Police being called out. Of the Secretary of the CNN, Mr. Anthony Dennis, all being included in this plot to support the Chief Secretary Fali Augustus. Now, just a recap of what happened. Serious allegations, so much was made today. The Chief Secretary started by taking some of the warrants on exhibit which errors within those search warrants. And then he went on to keep an audio clip with someone that was a member of the PDP and in the form of Mr. Appeal Abdullah, who is a whistleblower for this whole thing.
Is Pharaoh still existing? As he before, resembling an Israelite, not being treated right, enslaved day and night. Oh, we just can't go on this way. We just can't go on this way. Please deliver us today. We just can't go on this way. We like the Israelites still in pain. We just can't go on this way. So send us another Moses again. We just can't go on this way. Oh, 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 oh. Lord, look around, you'll see the Pharaoh mentality ruling universally. Leaders promoting their ego, being a modern Pharaoh, tyrannies they manifest. We just can't go on this way. We just can't go on this way. Please deliver us today. We just can't go on this way. Time to make them oppressors pay. We just can't go on this way. So we children could see